All right, everyone, we're going to get started. Good evening. We have quite the crowd. Thank you for coming tonight. We are going to get started with, we're actually going to skip our approval of minutes. I know that means next week or the following week we'll have a few weeks of minutes to approve. We do, however, and please Kim and Lynn keep me honest because of all the information we have at our hands today, we do have two information sheets that were part of the minutes for December 18th, which is a police department fleet information that Chief Cobb provided. So I know there were some questions around the department fleet. So she provided a very thorough overview of the vehicles, the models, the mileage, the warranties, et cetera. And there is also an information sheet that was requested on welfare. If you have any questions about that, we can address those right now. If not, we can address them at the end of the meeting if something comes up. I know we'll go through everything that we have in the packet because I know there's a lot of information. But since we're not going to approve the minutes, these were the two pieces of information that were addressed on the meeting on December 18th. Any questions about those two items? Okay. Why don't we move to Selectmen's report?
Okay. Good evening. The Selectmen had a meeting last Thursday. We started off with meeting with the water commissioners to discuss matters around conservation efforts and best practices. There was a bit of a disagreement with the effects of conservation efforts, but it was a very good conversation, and we will continue to communicate and hopefully collaborate with the water precinct. We spoke with the Police Facilities Advisory Committee about moving forward with their membership on working on how to communicate their work to the community and begin working on warrant articles. We agreed that we are going to have, when we start going through the warrant articles portion of the budget, you'll see that there's a $2 million placeholder that is for the acquisition of property and the work that needs to be done in the design of the new police facility. So far, all we've sort of agreed upon is that the purchase price for the Garvey property will be $350,000. We're working on that with all the stuff is with the attorneys now, and we're working on a purchase and sale agreement now with the Garveys. And then we will be continuing to discuss what the rest of the amounts will be needed, the dollars for that, and then we'll end up with our warrant article for March. And that amount of money we will be funded with a bond. We'll be taking out a bond for that. We also heard from Chief Lyon on his amendment to his budget, which you'll be hearing about tonight, to add another full-time firefighter. The Selectmen did approve his budget amendment, and we approved moving the town meeting start time back to 6 o'clock from 7 o'clock for some folks who think that's a little too late. And that might result in a longer meeting this year, who knows? But so that's it for the Selectmen's update.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
Bibi, on the $350,000, is the PNS solely stipulating that it is for the purchase for the sole use of the land to be a police facility versus is it open-ended that the town is going to buy that land as...
It's still being negotiated, right?
Yeah, the town will be buying it with no stipulation that it be a PD.
Okay,
That's not one of the conditions.
okay, thank you.
Karen?
Along those lines, are there any contingencies built into that purchase and sales in terms of passage of the warrant article for the project, et cetera?
Absolutely, yep.
Anything else for Bibi? No? All right. Let's move on to discussions of budget. So you'll see on your agenda, we have a few items. The first two items are follow-ups to Chief Lyon's revised fire department request, as well as the discussion we had last week with recreation. So Chief Lyon, do you want to come and discuss, review your full-time staffing request? You also have a updated budget in your packet, dated 1/11/25 at 9:56 a.m., which it does include the salary and wages and benefits for that headcount, correct? Correct. All right. All right, Chief, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Select Board, Budget Committee. It may be redundant for those that watched the minutes, but my presentation is very similar to what I gave to our Select Board members. I do want to introduce a couple of our Board of Fire Wards that are here. Karen Hoagland, who has been a long-term member, as well as our retired New Hampshire State Fire Marshal, Bill Degnan, is here this evening. So, first of all, my apologies for the delay of this modification to the fire department's budget. You've all received the letter that I sent to the Select Board. And in addition to, there's a timeline from a staffing perspective. And the reason why I added that was hopefully to clarify what we would do in the event that this was approved, as far as going through the Budget Committee, ultimately approval through town meeting, and then the request for the SAFER grant and the hiring process, and if we received the SAFER grant or didn't. So you've all heard me talk about the model that has worked really well for 25 years, and unfortunately this model has not been as effective as it has been in the past. As of late, even Lou, I heard him talk about at various meetings the importance of looking at long-term planning, and certainly I think that the Board of Fire Wards has done that. As recently as December 10th, they met for a strategic meeting, and during this meeting we talked about various things from vehicle acquisitions to the station expansion and certainly staffing. And though this modification seems like it's something that is showing up at the 11th hour, and again, my apologies, this is something that we've discussed and talked about for years. And so when we look at effective planning, this is something that we're just not throwing money at a problem. And so the question is, what is the problem? And so for us, covering nights and weekends is the thing that we have the most difficulty with. The New London Fire Department responds at a 7-year average to just under 900 calls. Last year was 926 calls. Out of those 926 calls, 750 plus are handled by the on-call officers. So our staffing models for the last 25 years, Monday through Friday, we've staffed the station with full-time personnel when our members are either working or out of town and not able to respond. Shifts on nights and weekends are covered by the on-call officers. So we have 9 officers that rotate through and get compensated from a stipend when they are on call, but when they respond to the various incidents, that's when they get compensated at their hourly rate. As society's changed and there's more focus on family and other commitments, there's been more reluctance to take calls. And so for me as the fire chief, it's nice to know that there's an officer that is available, that can make decisions, and certainly from our perspective, it's almost a situation where they respond to a call. Do we need more personnel? If there is an issue in town, is there someone with leadership capabilities that can organize effectively an incident? And so we've actually, instead of just our officers being able to take call, as of the last year, we've had firefighters taking call. We have a live-in student in the station that's going to school over in Laconia, and that program's been very effective for over 8 years now. We've had 3 people that have gone through. Those individuals in the past would help supplement the on-call officer, or in addition to able to respond. And So now our officers, again, because of family commitments or issues, are not able to respond. So when preparing this budget last spring, the Board of Fire Wards and I had talked about the SAFER grant. And the SAFER grant is a federal grant. It stands for Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Responses, which we were hoping to apply for 3 firefighters. The 3 firefighters would be paid 100% for 3 years. And although this makes sense to continue towards this grant-funded plan, we also realize, in an effort to minimize the tax impact in a single calendar year, a phased-in approach like we have for vehicle acquisitions, whether it be a piece of fire equipment or the station expansion, when we did the station expansion 20 years ago in 2004, is the best approach. And therefore, we're requesting a single person this year in an effort to minimize the tax impact at the end of the 3-year period. We still plan on applying for 2 additional people instead of 3. If we're not awarded this grant, the concern would also be that from a fiscal standpoint, we wouldn't be able to address our current needs for another 18 months. So we're looking at 6 months to when the budget would be implemented, July 1st, and then it would be another calendar year. And the concern is, how are we going to fix the staffing shortages that we have today if we didn't receive the grant, and then at the end of the 3 years, what's the tax impact if we did receive it? So those are some of the concerns that we have. Although the Budget Committee is also in the process of reviewing everyone's budgets, the other thing that made sense was for me to introduce this to the Select Board, and because they're the policy level group. And the last thing I wanted to do is to go through the budget process, make a recommendation or suggestion to this board, and then have the Select Board say, well, this isn't the time for this particular staffing level. So we thought that it was important to also vet it through the Select Board, and we're appreciative that they're able to take this up at their last meeting. I don't take this request lightly, as there's been a significant amount of consideration, deliberation through the entire process, and certainly this isn't a great time to ask for additional funds, but there's truly never a good time to spend money. But in this case, there certainly is a right time. So I appreciate you allowing me to ask for this reconsideration or amendment to the budget, and I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Chief. What questions do you have for Chief Lyon? Charlie?
I have about 6. Do you want me to do all 6?
I'm here all night.
All right.
Maybe.
It won't take all night. But you presented a budget about a month ago that was reviewed by the Select Board.
Yes, sir.
And I know there has been ongoing consideration, discussion, deliberation about the need for full-time positions, and that was coming. And I also heard at one of the Select Board meetings on this and it was Chairman Helm who said, we really need a plan.
Yes, sir.
And to look at it from a strategic perspective and a financial perspective. And that was acknowledged. And what I had assumed was, this did surprise me, because I'm questioning what changed between that meeting, that discussion, and making the decision to make a request now.
So the Board of Fire Wards, when we've met, and going back as far as May, so one of the meetings was May 13th, the shortfalls of the fire department were brought up. One of the biggest issues that we've had has been, again, change in membership. So we had one individual that was hired full-time by another fire department, and we had another member who used to take call every other weekend, at least once. He's still taking a weekend a month, and those individuals, he had a child, so his availability with his wife being a nurse isn't available. So the plan was always to apply for 3 firefighters, 3 full-time firefighters, in addition to what we currently have. When we looked at the staffing model, because currently we have 3, including myself, so Andrew Sarnovitz, Mike Matthey, and I, and then there's Jenna Edmonds, who's a per diem firefighter. So what we did is we looked at our current staffing models, and based upon the need during the daytime hours, and not to get off track, and I'm sorry that I'm explaining a bunch of things, but my explanation may answer some questions, it may introduce some more. In 1987, we had 34 members of the fire department. 34 of those people lived in town. 34 of them, 30 of those 34 members worked in town. Today, we have just over 40 members, only 17 live in town, and 11 work in town. And out of those 11 people, 4 of them are whom I just mentioned. There's 2 police officers, Jeff Daly and Max Isley, and then several retirees. And so for us, we contemplated, do we mix up our schedule to cover those shortfalls with the current staffing model? And it doesn't make sense with me being a department head and the requirements and meetings and all the other plethora of stuff that we do during the daytime hours to minimize my accessibility to the residents Monday through Friday, as well as Mike Matthews, our captain, and he deals with fire prevention issues. And so that's when the contractors are working, that's when he's working. So our thoughts were to take Andrew Sarnovitz's position, which is currently Monday through Friday, depending on his shifts. They work 4 10-hour shifts, and to add him to the rotation. And the hope was to apply for 3 additional full-time people. The issue is when you look at who were the recipients of the grant last year, it was Hampstead and the city of Manchester. So just those 2 municipalities in the state of New Hampshire were the recipients. The concern that we have is if New London didn't receive the grant, which we need, as well as staffing issues. If you read the paper, I was just talking to one of our select board members, and she's like, it's sort of Groundhog Day when reading about Dover. Every fire department is having this issue. In 10 minutes, the Kearsarge Mutual Aid, our area compact, is going to be talking about this issue down at the New London Fire Department. So this has been on the forefront. What has changed? Looking at it from a tax impact standpoint, for me as a department head, it's difficult to say if we're recipients of this grant, which is going to be a silver bullet for us, at the end of 3 years, there's going to be a pretty significant impact of $375,000 or $400,000 or whatever the price tag is. So that was our thought. This has always been on the plan. This has been talked about meeting after meeting, whether it be starting in May, going to July 15th, August 19th, September 16th, October 1st, any of the meetings that we had, the Board of Fire Wards meeting in December for their work session. So I guess I would say that our plans are we evaluate our staffing levels, and unfortunately, it's not necessarily my job to change how society is or to influence people's participation levels with the New London Fire Department. My job is to pivot and modify what we do and how we do things in order to provide the best services possible to the taxpayers in New London.
Okay, thank you for that. I looked at the math you applied to reduce on-call and per diem.
Yes, sir.
And connecting it to the logic of a position, does that mean that the staffing pattern will afford those reductions to actually occur?
Yes.
And what about overtime? Why wouldn't that also be affected downward as a result of this?
So overtime wouldn't be going downward, and I hate to even say this, it might actually go up. Because, and again, my apologies, we don't control when calls come in.
Right.
And so if a person is off duty and they come back into the station, they get compensated for when they respond back to quarters.
But if you have more people on staff in a staffing model that are available to meet that call that presently is reliant on on-call per
Yep.
diems, why wouldn't overtime go down?
I understand what you're saying, but they're still covering the same time frame. You have more people, but the calls, those 150 general alarm calls that come in are Monday through Friday, and they're all hours of the day and night. The problem is that from a workforce perspective, most people work 2,080 hours,
Yep.
generally speaking, a 40-hour work week. The fire department covers 8,764 hours, or whatever the math, 24 times 365.
Yep.
So that's the issue, is that we can't control when someone calls the department. What we do, different than any other fire department around that I'm aware of, is we minimize the general alarm calls, which has worked really well. That's that 25-year plan. If we didn't have the system that we did, we would have been in the same predicament probably at least 7 years, if not 5 years ago. So I was hired during the daytime hours because there was a decrease in participation levels. There was a concern of individuals responding during the daytime hours when people were out of town or weren't available. And really what we're faced with today is individuals that just can't leave because of the demands of two people working. Fortunately, we've got a lot of nurses in town, but when an individual's working up at DHMC, the other spouse needs to be home watching the kids. And as far as overtime, so we have a member of the New London Fire Department that's on the Concord Fire Department. Last year, he worked 900 extra overtime hours. We have someone on the Derry Fire Department, one of our lieutenants. He worked 1,100 extra overtime hours. So this is not unique. For Andrew, yes, 400 is a lot, but this is not unique to the town of New London.
Did you give consideration to adjusting the request for the increase in the per diem rate from the base it's at to the one that's asked for in the budget as a part of this in terms of easing budget impact?
So there will be a decrease if we're recipients of the grant.
Right, and
But I need to, so what I did is I took, and not to get into.
I think that's satisfactory for me.
Yeah.
I don't want you to have to go through more explanation. I was just really curious about how the other costs, per diem, on-call, overtime, might be positively, meaning reduced as a result of adding
Yeah.
or not a position. And it also points to, this is a long-term problem.
Long-term,
That's
yes.
got a high cost to it, and I think one of our challenges as a committee is we need that kind of consideration in our budget process, not just a year-to-year.
And that's the,
That's a
yeah.
political statement more than
Yep.
anything else, but I think it points to the.
No, 100%. And that's the reason why I actually had this sort of flow chart that also had numbers. So thanks to Karen, I met up with Karen in the parking lot, just so that we're being very transparent. And again, I hate to say this, but as the person that's ultimately in charge of the New London Fire Department, I feel like I've almost failed the town. Because from a visionary standpoint, I pride myself in looking long range and being able to come up with a plan that meets the townspeople's needs while still being fiscally responsible, and the fact that this amazing program that we've had for so long, using a live-in student, having an on-call officer system, what I can't change though is society, and for better or for worse, there's more emphasis on self-care and me time, and at the end of the day, when a call comes in, I'm leaving my Thanksgiving dinner. I'm leaving anytime a call comes in, and that happens 150 times a year. Fortunately, some of those calls are certainly Monday through Friday or whatever the case is when I'm working. But if it's at night and I'm available, I'm responding to the call. That's not the case with today's participation levels.
Those are all questions? Okay, Lindsay?
Great. Jay, this will be easy, just like it's a yes or no question. Just giving your current staffing levels, and there's got to be federal guidelines or recommendations based on our population density around here. Do you meet those right now?
No.
Okay.
And those staffing level, NFPA 1710, 1720 are the staffing levels.
Karen, go ahead.
Thanks, Jay. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
What shifts would you anticipate this new person being in a position to cover? Is it the weekend shift? Is it the overnight shift? Just in terms of coverage for that.
The answer is yes. So what we would do is we would transition our current lieutenant into a 24-hour rotation, as well as this new person. They would work 24 on, 24 off, 24 on with this proposed schedule. And we almost had to, and here's a schedule. We almost had to reverse engineer it. So to Charlie's point, we could look at what weekends we could take away from the per diem or on-call systems. And so by doing this, for instance, one of our lieutenants has taken call every Monday night for at least the last 7, if not 8 years. That individual now would have 4 weeks that he would take call, and then 4 weeks that he would be off. And this would be a sliding scale going from Monday right through to the weekends. The weekends would also be covered, and because there's only 2 people that would be in this rotation, the hope for us would be that we're recipients of the grant. And then if we're recipients of the grant, 24/7 gets covered with the exception of sick time or leave time, which is our vacation time. And so those per diem shifts, we'd still need some per diem, but not to the extent that we have today.
And your plan is, if we are not recipients of the grant, that this program would still move forward, fully funded from the town?
As far as the employee being hired, is that what you?
Yes, the other two, because this is like a plan for ultimately 3 new additions to staff.
Yes.
And kind of when you look at the flow chart, there's one track where we get awarded the grant, and the other track is not awarded the grant, and we still move forward in 2027 and 2028 with the hiring.
Yeah, so as that fiscal year 2027 comes to fruition, as well as 2028, we would introduce those individuals, and contingent upon who is hired, there is an acclimation training period that they need to get up to speed, but then would be transitioned into that same rotation. And the reason why, and I talked a little bit about this to the select board, but smaller departments have always can be considered a stepping stone. Where when I was first hired, some people would get on a smaller department and then transition to a Franklin and then go ultimately to Concord, Manchester, Nashua. Those were the places to go, or Exeter because they paid really well. And so I think what's important for us is to pay our employees well. Obviously, the townspeople have been hugely supportive when it comes to our apparatus and our replacement schedule. I think that's very important, and also facilities. And so our goal isn't to necessarily be the end-all, be-all of fire departments, but there is a value to retention of employees. And so by having a good schedule, I wish I could work the schedule. It is what it is. But I think that this schedule would be enticing to some individuals as well as the town New London. It's a beautiful community. I joke about the intricacies of what we do and, our Narcan expiring. Those are real issues. Those are real problems. A friend of mine has pushed Narcan 4 times to an individual in an hour period to 4 separate individuals, or 7 times in a shift down in Manchester. Like the problems that some people have, fortunately, not to say that this is Chief Cobb can probably go into give better examples than I. It's not a perfect community, but we certainly aren't necessarily tasked with some of the intricacies of other municipalities.
So kind of putting it in a nutshell, then, you see this as much as you can see into the future as addressing the structural need of the department.
Yes,
For the next, call it 3 years.
absolutely.
Okay, not
Yep.
requiring you have a crystal ball.
Yeah.
But seeing it going forward.
I mean, ideally, I'd be coming to the city of Lebanon. They were not recipients of the 8 full-time firefighters. The city looks like they're going to put 4 people on. I would love to sit here and say, we need 3 full-time firefighters in order to meet our needs. And we do need that right now. From a planning perspective, it's a hard justification for me to not vet all avenues. And that's what we've done throughout the years, whether it be on call, our per diem staff that we currently have. We look at that for better or for worse, with the leave of absence of one of our per diem people. We've actually implemented the per diem staffing levels now, before we were even able to implement this July 1st. And it's working okay, but with that being said, there's holes and there's deficiencies and there's some complications of irregular individuals working.
One of the things I recall hearing discussed at the fire wards meeting is a thing called an interagency agreement. And I think that was some months ago when that was a topic. And do you see that kind of in the future of New London providing, because like I say, in a nutshell here, we're doubling our personnel in the fire service.
Yes.
Going from 3 to 6, so this is
Yep.
a really big commitment.
Absolutely.
And long-term, so I bring up that interagency question. Do you see other towns, as they address their challenges in staffing, that they're approaching it in a similar way, where they're trying to add to their full-time professional staff as well? Or do you see them staying with the model that has been, the tried and true in the past, that perhaps is a little less certain these days as being the right fit?
When you say interagency, do you mean our mutual aid, like the contiguous towns to us?
Yeah, I would like to just kind of, pick up on what had been discussed. I believe it was maybe in the June, July
Yeah,
kind of
okay,
timeframe.
yeah.
Just in general, what are your thoughts in that regard?
So looking forward, recruitment and retention has always been an issue for call and volunteer fire departments. Now it's hit full-time departments, hence the pretty excessive overtime whether it be mandatory overtime or individuals taking up those shifts. So what do we have here? New London's sort of on an island. All of the smaller towns around us are where we were in the 90s. The problem is that, again, all those communities have less and less firefighters. So as far as mutual aid agreements, we work really well with all our mutual aid counterparts, and it's not, there's a difference between mutual aid and auto aid, so I'm not sure, like, getting into that complexity, but all departments are looking at staffing levels and trying to come up with something that's fiscally palatable and serves the needs of the community. Sunapee, for the last several years, has looked at full-time people. They now have 24-hour per diem shifts that are available. I think right in the range the chief was saying, $180,000 to $200,000 is what they have budgeted for their 24/7 coverage in Sunapee. They can't fill those shifts. So, you know, I can't speak for Chief Clark or Cochran, and again, the Kearsarge Mutual Aid meeting, this is one of the things that we look at and focus on is mutual aid agreements, staffing levels. I know that Newport's requesting more people. They have someone 24 hours a day. All the departments are in the same predicament. And so I think that you'll see other departments do something similar to what we did, especially during the daytime hours when people aren't available. And for better or for worse, there are more mutual aid calls. For us, fortunately, it's specifically for fires or a larger incident. Chief Clark may, I'm not sure if it's chief or our DPW director, we may have a situation where there's an injured person up on top of Kearsarge, and because you need a certain number of individuals, 17 per or 16 per mile, of hauling someone out of the woods, Chief Clark's crew may only have a dozen individuals, so they may need some additional personnel from other departments to assist.
Thank you.
Jay, this might be a silly question. Is it safe to assume that I see the difference with the less part-time wages, on-call pay, and the FICA, Medicare, as you continue to potentially add headcount, those costs will come down about the same amount over time? So this is with one new headcount. If you add 3 more or 2 more after that, could we expect some, I'm not asking you for an exact amount, but a similar slight reduction in those line items?
So on-call and per diem, yes. The FICA and Medicare, that is...
I don't, yeah, it's
Yeah,
small. It's small compared. I was just curious on really on the on-call. and
Maybe. Lynn, can you help me? Can I phone a friend?
That's okay. We don't have to answer the FICA Medicare question.
Yeah, but the other... Okay. Yeah, so, yeah, but it was tweaked slightly, so...
Okay. I think it's the part-time and on-call pay that I was more curious about, since those are the big.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. As far as part-time, though, we still need the
Sure.
the firefighters to show up, especially for those general alarms.
Yeah.
So, and the whole reason why we had the on-call officer system, or our so the full-time people, we focus on preparedness, training, and code compliance. Our jobs as full-time people is to make it as easy as possible for the volunteers to be volunteers. So when a call comes in, they show up and they're able to participate because they're not going to the minutia of a tree down on fire or a minor motor vehicle accident or carbon monoxide detector activation with no symptoms. It's the motor vehicle accidents with injury, it's the smoke in the buildings, it's the calls that are more serious in nature where you need additional personnel to assist.
Okay. Great, thank you. Any other questions for Jay? All right. Thank you, sir.
Again, sorry for the delay
That's all right.
or late modification.
All right. Why don't we move on to the next department, Recreation. So Putnam's here. You have a memo in your handout, which from Putnam, And Putnam, you can go through that if you'd like, just with a, kind of talking about what we talked about last meeting and some potential reductions and different scenarios with different either budget as it stays or some potential reductions in each of the scenarios.
Hey, so, everybody has that memo. Yeah, there are two parts to the memo. The first part is trying to address some of the questions that were brought up about our staffing. And then there was our initial budget that I presented as the first original, and then there were 3 other scenarios to look at what it might be options if we looked at reducing some of our staffing on the beaches to try to reduce the overall waterfront staffing costs while still able to run the beaches effectively and safely. I will say that one thing that I would like to recommend on my original budget would be to reduce the Halloween event funds from $10,000 down to $8,000. I've consulted Chief Lyon and Chief Cobb and the Rec Commission, and we feel like that number can be reduced to do our part to try to be fiscally responsible as well as still run that event safely. So that's one thing that I would recommend to my original budget. I added it to the several other scenarios, but I think that in an effort to try to reduce our budget in the overall climate, I think it would be great to be able to try to reduce that, and like I said, still be able to do the event safely and as it's planned for next year and into the future. So I'm happy to answer questions, or I can just go through the staffing information. What would people like to do? If you have specific
I
questions.
think it might be helpful, just, and especially even the audience, is if you could maybe high level go through each scenario and what the differences are in each of the scenarios. So you have the original, your original budget minus $2,000 for Halloween.
Yep,
And then we have, how many, 3 different scenarios?
3 different scenarios. Okay. So if you looked at alternative budget scenario number 1, that would be reducing the $2,000 from the special events, and that would be a elimination of the waterfront staff role of the beach attendant for a significant savings of $17,745. And that would mean that if we were cutting the beach attendants, we would be asking the lifeguards to be doing increased responsibilities. So we would need to increase the number of lifeguards we would have, average number of lifeguards we would have on from 5 to 6, 3 at each beach, and then also increase their pay by $1 on average from what we had originally said in my original budget. That would be them working, the guards working preseason days starting Memorial Day, and then starting 7 days a week, pretty much on the last day of school for Kearsarge, which is this year projected to be June 17th, which is a Tuesday. So that is one scenario. We feel like being able to reduce the role of the beach attendants would be a change to staffing and wouldn't be ideal, but is something we can do still safely and effectively and have it covered by have their duties, which I've listed in the scenario 1 explanation, have their duties covered by the lifeguards. And I did mention that there might be times that if the lifeguards were having to, be doing their job, dealing with a safety issue, or if we were down guards, certainly the guarding would always take precedence over the boat loaning program. But I think if we had enough guards there, we could manage that, and I can certainly be doing some help and oversight as well to be able to manage some of the other duties that the beach attendants were doing. So that's scenario number 1. Scenario number 2 is similar, but basically The only change would be that we would cut 9 days. We would cut those preseason days for the guards, and that would basically have the beaches be opened, the docks out, the lines up, bathrooms would be open, but there would be no staff on there for Memorial Day, and then there's a few weekends that we would normally cover before school starts. So that would be a reduction of 9 days, approximately $6,300 in wages, and also eliminating the waterfront beach attendant position, as well as taking the $2,000 out of the Halloween Special Events Fund, and then also same reflection of increasing the number of guards average per day by 1, and then also up $1 for the increased responsibilities for the guards as they took on more responsibilities in the role of the, with no beach attendants there. And then the last scenario was having the lifeguards and beach attendants in doing their roles as the same as they normally would, but the guards and beach attendants only working 6 days a week instead of 7 days a week. So the third option is basically cutting a day off of our schedule over the summer from 7 days a week for lifeguards and beach attendants to 6 days a week. I would think that that would probably be Mondays we would do that. And reflective of all the different costs of how much each one would be reduced by and the overall impact on the budget. So those are my proposals. If I had to look at one that I favored over any of them, certainly I feel like the first, my original budget minus the 2,000 for reducing the special events for Halloween would be the ideal scenario and the least disruptive scenario. But if, again, we really needed to tighten our belts and look at reducing budget scenarios and reducing waterfront staff waging, I would lean towards budget scenario number 2.
Is it safe to assume for just for Jackie, for the Rec Commission, did you guys have a position, or is it safe to assume the original budget is your position as a commission?
The original budget is our position. So, yes, we would like to get that full budget, but again, wanted to, address the questions from last go around and provide those alternatives.
Okay. I know I have a couple questions. Lindsay, you had your hand up, or Mark, you first? Yep, go ahead.
Thank you, Putnam. Just for the audience, is your original budget submitted, not the one that you're suggesting minus $2,000, but the original budget you submitted, is that up or below from last year's budget?
That is reduced from last year. We were at 243 plus, and we would be at 236 this year.
So you have already come to us with an original budget that is lower than last year's budget. Is that correct?
Yes, and the main reduction would be in our water staff wages, trying to get it to better reflection of what we actually see from the staffing as opposed to what we would optimally want.
Okay, and I just have a follow-up. Last time you were here, I asked, would the experience be the same or better with your submitted budget? So I'm going to ask you again. So with your submitted budget, your original budget, would the experience be the same or better?
The alternatives would be more disruptive to our current staffing at the beaches.
Thanks, Mark. Lindsay, you had a question?
So, Putnam, thank you for these alternative budget scenarios. I hate them. I liked your original, and I'm going to tell you why. First of all, at no time do I think anybody's ever wanted less lifeguards, or has that ever been brought to my attention when I was on the Rec Commission and or in all the years here. It was suggested as an option just to cut. But I really don't think the general public would thank us for saving them between 10 and 20,000 on an operating budget that's already lower, like you said, than last year's. Halloween, I don't know how much more, like, input you can get from a town or, you know, patron, that they want that. That's what they want. And it might be a pain, it might be annoying, it might be expensive, but that is what the people have unequivocally said they want. So to take away from that is probably not the best idea either, in my opinion. I'm just stating my opinions.
Yep, so just to clarify, I might not have said that as clearly as I could have, that even with the reduction, we would still be able to cover that, that event in a way we've covered it already. There would be no reduction to the way it was last year, or the way we hope to have it in the future.
Well, then I'm all for that. You save $2,000, you save 2,000. So we can take 2,000 off your original budget then?
And
Okay.
still have a buffer to be able to have some wiggle room there.
Okay.
But again, I think just, I've in reflecting over the current scenario of trying to save as much money as we possibly can, to be able to get that number more in line with what our actual numbers were of costs for Department of Public Works and Fire Department and Police Department to manage the event as it is, and as we would like it to be in the future.
Yeah, okay, good. No, that's all I got. Thank you.
But if you reduce it $2,000, there's no option for better. There's no option for growth, right?
I think we talk a lot about the Halloween event. We talk a lot about how important it is to people and how it's changed over the years. And I think that we've found a very good place as where it is size-wise, and talking an awful lot with the rec commissioners, with the volunteers who help us out, and also with Chief Cobb and Chief Lyon, that it seems like right now it's at a really good place where it provides a wonderful experience, but it's not too big. And we don't want to get it in a place where it's too big, or we have safety issues that become increased risks. So I think this is a really good place to keep it.
I'm not speaking solely on Halloween. I'm talking about other programming, other events, right? So if you're reducing, you've already come to us with a reduction, right? But if you reduce it more, aren't you, in a sense, not giving yourself the opportunity to grow events and programming? Because you're reducing a reduced budget already.
And
I'm interested in better, right? I'm not interested in going away from better.
yeah, and I think that this, even with this reduction, and this was a increase that was specifically put towards the staffing of the Halloween event, this budget line item of $10,000 in 2022. So I want to get that in line with what we're actually spending, and still be able to manage the event safely. And I'm with you, I want to grow and develop the programs and what we're doing as much as we can, but I'm also trying to, again, feeling in the current climate that we want to keep things as streamlined as possible.
John, you had a question?
Thanks, Putnam. Just wanted to kind of burrow down a little bit on option number 2, since you said that was something that you would do, with the realization that my questions will apply to the other scenarios a little bit as well. Can you briefly describe what a beach attendant does, so that we know what the swap in and out of that position does?
So the beach attendants' main duties are to be doing beach cleanup in the morning, beach cleanup in the evening. It's like raking the beaches, picking up trash as necessary, and they are also monitoring the bathrooms. They're restocking the bathrooms. They're not cleaning the bathrooms, but they're restocking any supplies in the bathroom, soap, toilet paper, things like that. And they are managing the boat loan program, which is where there's kayaks and paddle boards at both beaches. They're helping people get those in and out, and then they're managing the paperwork for that. Those are the main roles of the beach attendants. They would also be in a role to support the lifeguards or interact with patrons, with questions or things like that. What's this, where's the bathrooms? Oh, my kid needs this, or to be able to help. Also, if there were people, sometimes we have scenarios where people try to launch their boats from the beaches, whether it's a kayak or a paddleboard. They would be a person who would be monitoring that situation to say, oh, you can't do that. You have to go to the boat launches and things like that. So their supervisory role, but mainly they're doing the bathrooms, they're doing the beach cleanups in the morning, in the afternoons, and as necessary during the day, and then they're doing the boat programs.
So does a beach attendant supervise the lifeguards as well, or just the beach itself?
Just the beach
So,
itself.
okay, so, thanks. I'm just curious to know, is a beach supervisor easier to find than a lifeguard?
Yes, the beach attendants are younger, and they don't need to be certified in lifeguard. They don't need Red Cross training or anything like that. So they're basically, they're doing the upkeep of the beaches. But it is helpful in some ways because we frequently have kids who will be attendants, and then they are a year older, and then they'll be lifeguards. So it can be kind of a feeder for kids coming in. They get to see the lifeguards, they get to work with the lifeguards, they get to see what working at the beach is like, and then they hopefully can come back to us another year. But in the past, the lifeguards had done they were doing the bathrooms and they were doing the boats in years past.
So the reason I ask this question is because it's my understanding that many places have difficulty finding lifeguards, including us, and it seems like you're taking a relatively easy position to find and putting it at a more difficult position to find, and I question that strategy. However, I may surprise you here, the idea of aligning the beach days with Kearsarge school districts doesn't necessarily offend me personally. Like, I'll just say that. So part of this makes sense to me, part of it doesn't.
Other questions for Putnam? Karen?
My question is, I don't know if it's directly for Putnam, but this cut to the recreation director position was supported by the Board of Selectmen. I mean, that's how it came over to us in the budget that was presented by the board, if I'm correct, right?
There was a reduction of $50,000, and I guess I'd look to BB, was that?
Of $50,000 from the recreation budget in total, and the way that Lynn showed it was on the full-time salary line. It was kind of the only place where it could come from, so the assumption would be that the position would become part-time.
So I think it could be helpful for us to understand better the concerns that the board had in terms of really making this recommendation in the budget. And I think, Bibi, when it was addressed last week, I think you had taken a different view in that you voted to put it back into this budget here. So I'd be curious kind of what has changed in your mind, if something has changed, or what you've been thinking, and what was the concern from the board in making this recommendation. Thank you.
I think I've stated already that I believe that if there were robust program, that a full-time rec director, I would support a full-time rec director with robust programming, and for sure we need a full-time rec director in the summer. I was questioning whether we need a full-time rec director through the winter months because there's not as much programming going on. Have I changed my mind? No, because I believe we should have a full-time rec director, and I believe the rec program in this town is important. It's vital. It's important to our families in this town. I'm not sure what else I want to say. I don't know if Bill wants to speak to it as well, but it was a discussion where we were bouncing around full-time versus part-time, and we did throw it over the fence to the Budget Committee to continue the conversation.
Does that answer your question?
Well, I guess a question with a question, right? So, I look at this question, what I've been having in my head, it was full-time to part-time, and I understand those were different years, and then back to full-time, and now this is potentially recommending or not approving a full-time.
Well, I think to be clear, so we voted last week, right, on the rec department. The committee voted to put $50,000 back in. It is shown in the department head's salary. The selectmen get to make the choice if they want a part-time or full-time. We don't get to make the decision that we move a recreation director to part-time. So they could decide, we want that position to be a part-time, and they could cut that position to part-time, and that would reduce the salary. We voted to just add $50,000 back, which went into the line item of full-time salary. Does that make sense?
All right, so the question was put to us from the Board of Selectmen, and we have, as a board, as a committee, have chosen to reinstate that $50,000 to the line item of Recreation Director.
Correct.
And by virtue of that fact, it's a full-time position, by definition?
It's, well, it's a full-time position now. We're voting to add that money back in the line item.
Yep.
I mean, I think
Again,
you can...
it's the selectmen's decision
Yeah.
if they want to reduce it to part-time.
Oh, okay, all right. You can
It's not
probably
our decision.
You can probably understand why I find clarification helpful here.
Sure.
And I think I get it now. So we have voted as a committee to reinstate the funding, and ultimately it's up to the Board of Selectmen to determine if that stays as the line item for the salary, thus making it full-time. Is that the math?
Yes, that's,
Is that the flow?
yeah. They could choose to go, is it safe to assume, if they decided to go to part-time, they could still have that $50,000 to use as a budget.
And this will go through in the reconciliation process then, it'll be
Yeah,
discussed
we will
further.
vote on the full budget. We certainly are not going to get to it tonight, but we will vote on the full budget. So we'll have a chance to vote again on all the different line items, department items, and then depending on where the selectmen end up, we will hopefully reconcile with that.
I appreciate that clarification.
Yep. Charlie?
Putnam, thank you, first of all, for coming back with the information and the options. And I focused, after looking at it and also listening, to scenario number 2. Is it possible that with scenario 2, by increasing the rate of pay for lifeguards, that would aid in attracting and retaining lifeguards?
I believe that would be an increased incentive for kids coming back or coming new to the position, yes. But
So-
we would also be asking them to do additional duties to what they were doing before.
Right, and I'm with you, and I think from my perspective, I like the thinking. I think John's comment was spot on as well, and I'm just coming at it from the standpoint of lifeguards are hard to recruit, hard to retain necessarily, or more difficult than an attendant, but by increasing rates of pay, we stand the opportunity to increase recruitment and potentially retention. And I think we're looking for budget opportunities, and we need to really start doing that. And this is to me, represents a very good plan. It also, I don't feel by what you've said, or my personal perception is that it's materially compromising the effectiveness of our programming and support at the beaches. And so I'm in favor of scenario 2. My motion would be that we reduce the Halloween budget by $2,000, and we reduce the wage line by $18,145.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor to reduce the Halloween budget by 2,000, and what was, and basically go with scenario 2.
Yes, go with scenario 2, and if you remove the 2,000 out of the total estimated reduction to 2145, the balance is 18,145. So Halloween reduction of 2,000, and then wage reduction related FICA of 18,145.
Are there any seconds to that motion?
No second.
All right, any questions or comments? Okay, so we'll put that motion to a vote. All those in favor? All those opposed?
John, what you got?
Are you abstaining?
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay. All right, so that does not pass. Okay. Are there any other motions? Mark?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the original 236,929 submitted budget.
Are there any seconds? Lindsay seconds. Okay, we'll vote on to keep it as it is now in the original budget, or the budget as it is now. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. We'll keep it at 236. Sorry. 236,929. All right. All right. Any other questions for Putnam? I think we've addressed that. Okay, thank you, Putnam. All right. All right, so we will move on to capital reserves. Kim, can you help me out here? I know we have a capital reserve fund activity sheet in your packet. We also, in our original packets, have quite a large folded up sheet that we discussed a while back. So that is in the very last section. If you look at your last green page in your binder, that has capital reserves. Do we want to do a review for the committee? Does the committee feel like we need a review of the capital reserve since it's been a while since we discussed that?
I think a review could be helpful.
Okay.
I think when we first discussed it, it may have been kind of a quick visit, so going back would be good.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so everybody's looking at their proposed capital reserve fund activity. These are the decisions of the selectmen. We have the fire self-contained breathing apparatus. There's scheduled to be a deposit of $54,000, and the chief looks to spend $350,000 to purchase some fire breathing apparatus in this fiscal year. We have the capital reserve fund for the fire truck that the town entered into an agreement some years ago. That payment is $407,303 with a deposit of $116,000. Highway equipment replacement fund, the deposit the selectmen are recommending is $500,000. Currently, we are looking to purchase a $268,000 for a backhoe and zero-turn mower. Sidewalk capital reserve, $100,000 deposit, and to spend $60,000 for various sidewalk projects. Tracy Memorial Library repairs, the selectmen are recommending a deposit of $200,000, and the library trustees expect to spend $60,000 for exterior repairs. Town Building Maintenance Fund, their deposit is requested at $100,000, and there are not any scheduled expenditures now. That obviously could change. The selectmen are agents to expend on that, so there could be things that come up that the selectmen would decide to spend some money on. Energy projects, you remember Jamie Hess was in some weeks ago. The selectmen are recommending a deposit of $20,000, and there may be an expenditure of $150,000 for a solar array at the stump dump. The Energy Committee is looking for grant money, and so that may, assuming if we get the grant, we may not spend capital reserve funds, but it will be available. General Cemetery, we're doing what we did last year. You recall we took the maintenance expenditures out of the operating budget, and we are using funds that are available in the capital reserves. Those expenditures are $15,000. And finally, the sewer department, the deposit is recommended at $66,000 with an expenditure of $163,000 for a utility truck and the George's Mills pump station alarm upgrade. I'll also point out that you'll recall with Rob Prohl and Mark Vernon were in, the Conservation Commission has recommended $75,000 deposit. The selectmen have not funded that request.
What questions do we have
I have,
for capital
just-
reserve? So we do have department heads here who can help answer questions
Yeah.
as well.
I have just two. On the solar array at the stump dump, understood what you just said, Kim, in relation to the possibility of a grant. If that is received, this expenditure may not be the 150 or a lower number. Does that mean the decision has been made to install a solar array at the stump dump? Or is that still something that's being discussed? And I contextually want to put it in line with the $350,000 solar array buyout. And does it, well, that's the first question, is the decision already made? If it is, I'll stop. But my question, and I think the select board, BB, talked a bit about this. I can't be exact, but my recollection was maybe we need to consider revising the master plan and the goal to get to zero, to get to clean energy by a timeline of 2030. And given that, and given the other capital requirements, is it prudent to consider that? Is that something that's in the purview of the Budget Committee to consider? And one, reevaluate the solar array, the merit of that financially, both near and long term. And secondly, does pushing it out so our capital requirements are somewhat reduced, albeit relative to the others, not very much.
Pushing what out?
When we would commit to
Oh,
a solar array and install and the acquisition.
Wouldn't you have to have a warrant article which was voted on as a warrant article to change it? Never
to
mind.
change what? No, I think Charlie's first talking about the master plan goal to be of 2030, pushing that out. That wasn't voted
Oh,
on.
I thought there was
That
something
was
we
in the master
voted as
plan.
a goal and goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Nobody ever
Oh,
says
we did,
that.
oh, we did? Okay.
Town meeting warrant.
It was only in the master plan because it had been voted on at town meeting.
Oh, I see.
As a warrant article.
Sorry about that.
So.
Never happens. Thank you so much.
So are you
So
asking?
the buses
should
left
it-
the station on the solar array at the stump dump?
Stump dump, yes.
Okay, but the acquisition of the
We didn't sign any contracts.
current
Jamie is-
solar array for $350,000, that is still a warrant article to come forward
The 350,000?
to acquire the solar array?
No, and Jamie Hess is here. You could talk to him about details about that. Jamie, do you want to address the issue of purchasing the solar array?
Well, I don't want to go into
Oh.
the should we or shouldn't we. I'm looking at the timing of it and the impact on our capital reserves. I understand that 350 is not here in this listing.
Right. This, for fiscal year
there-
2026, we have the 150,000.
Understand,
Yeah.
understand.
No purchase of the solar array at the.
Present time, that's in a
Ple-
future
Pre-
year.
Right, Pleasant Street, is that the one you mean?
Yep.
Yes. No, not yet. Not in this budget.
Okay. Question to Sam. We had an earlier conversation offline before the meeting about the lease, possible lease of a grader. There's a $600,000 in the CIP for the purchase of a grader versus your comments earlier about lease. And why I'm asking it, even though that's not here, we're allocating $500,000 to highway. Would the allocation be potentially less if we made a lease cost decision on a grader that carries a $600,000 expense in whatever year it is?
It's 2031.
Like 3 years?
Yep. Not having information on leasing of graders, I don't really know, and I'm not exactly sure how the funding amount was built to, I was gonna say, Lynn might be able to better answer that as far as the funding amount for the 600,000 for the grader.
So based on the request for equipment, in 2028, there is, and bear with me, my eyes are crossing lines here. There's a 1-ton dump truck, there is a mower, a refuse tractor, and an excavator. Even with the 500,000 we're putting in, that account goes to negative 162.
All right, that's where I was going.
That answers your question, right?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Sam.
Karen, you had your hand up.
Yes, I have a question on, take a step back here, to the energy project and the solar array at the stump dump. In context of the renewable energy goal target of 2030, I think when the vote was taken, whether it be 2018 town meeting, I think, if I look at it right, we've had since then, the community power has come online as an option. And within the community power options is the renewable option. So I just put that out there in terms of really looking at that analysis. Could we meet our goal stated by the town meeting by flipping the switch and going to the community power renewable option versus having to make this infrastructure expense or investment? And I just wanted to see if that analysis has been discussed.
Energy Committee is very involved in community
Right.
power. They actually brought it
I
here.
know that, and they did a great job in making that available. But my understanding is, as a consumer, we have the option, we have a number of options as to the fuel that we can have our power serviced by, and one of them is renewables.
Yep.
So I put that out there, that I think that would be an important calculation for us to look at.
I guess in regards to capital, you're just saying, making a general comment to
Well,
the
no.
selectmen or to the Energy Commission.
No, it's a question, because I see before us an option to spend $150,000 with the goal of the 2018 vote at town meeting to meet that goal. What I'm saying is there's another option, and that is to use community power in the renewable and energy choice that they make available to all consumers. So that's what I'm asking. So rather than us having to make this expenditure and install a solar panel array and all that may come with that, i.e. having to run the electric line, maybe some fencing, all those ancillary expenses that we could potentially just say to community power, the town of New London chooses to be on the renewable energy option, and therefore we wouldn't need to spend this $150,000.
So are you just, but what I guess
Yeah.
I'm getting at is, do you want to, I don't know if that's a discussion for the Budget Committee, or are you saying, I would like to discuss not having $150,000 taken out of capital reserves for that?
I'd like to see the calculation to see which is most beneficial, most cost-effective to the town. And what that, I know there had been some discussion, I think,
I
at
don't
the
know if we
Energy
have that
Committee.
information available right now to
Okay.
discuss.
I think it would be important for us to be able to make that assessment, whether we believe the right thing is to spend $150,000, and I think we should know what that cost benefit is by going to the other option.
I think that citizens get to choose among various options.
Right.
I don't know that the town of New London could force all of its residents to.
No, it's not the residents, it's the town.
Oh, just the town
Yes, it's
accounts.
just- And
Oh,
that's what
I got
when
you.
I looked at the warrant or the vote that was taken at town meeting, that's what it was. It was,
Oh, so you're wondering, will that be enough to meet the goals of the energy? The town has one goal of energy efficiency, and so do the citizens. We're also going to encourage citizens.
well, the warrant, the vote that when I read it, and please, I can be corrected if someone has better information, The town stated a goal that by 2030, it wanted to be on renewable energy. That's the position people at town meeting took.
Yep.
This solar panel array installation is one of those options to do that, it sounds like.
Yep.
And what I'm saying is since 2018, 2019, whenever it was taken, we've had community power come online. And one of the options that they give people that, you know, I have it at home, and I believe the town has it too, that we could
Yep.
choose to say, okay, community power, we want the energy that we get to be sourced from the renewables. And it's, to me, is is 150,000 today, and all the ancillary that may come with it. B is we flip the switch on community power and say, we'd like to choose this particular option where the energy comes from renewables.
Right, so you're wondering, is the Energy Committee recommending the town spend money when it could otherwise get it from community power?
I think that's a worthwhile discussion so that we know what
I
what
think
the
it's-
delta is.
I agree. I think it's worth a discussion. I think the challenge is we don't have the analysis that you're asking for right now to have the discussion and what the difference in the budget would be. So if you want to make a motion to reduce the capital reserves by $150,000 for energy or by some amount, you can certainly do that. I don't think we're prepared to have a discussion with that analysis
I agree.
at this moment.
So what can we do to
Bill.
get that analysis?
I promised my wife I wouldn't speak tonight, but this question is very simple right now. You're trying to decide whether to include $20,000 of additional monies into this capital reserve account. The $135,000 that's already there is there to be spent on energy projects at some time in the future. So Karen's question is a legitimate one for the selectmen to take up with the Energy Commission in the future. The question before us now is, do you want to put the $20,000 in there that the selectmen thought would be wise to do so that we would have 150 a case? That was the direction we decided to go on the policy issue.
Right.
Thank you, Bill, for that, thank you, Chairman Helm, for that clarification. I think it's good for the Municipal Budget Committee to, for the Budget Committee to have this question on our radar for a future consideration.
Okay, noted.
Thank you.
Thank you. John, you have some questions.
Yeah, I think I have two for Sam, so try to keep you up there for both of them. But can you just review quickly the what's the third rail in town now, the sidewalk plans and so forth, and what type of funding you're looking for, and over what period of time?
Yeah, so it's a 7-year project plan is kind of what we're looking to do, and we're starting on that side of town, we'll just go that way, up by the Catholic Church and coming down just due to the fact that for this year, there's still the bond on the road due to the water main project. So we're looking to tackle it kind of in phases over 7 years, and we're doing that with contracted work and with work within Public Works Department. Once we get, our hands dirty in the project, we'll be able to kind of better see what things are going to cost. Curbing prices right now are kind of all over the place, but I think where we did it was kind of with the industry standard and what I was seeing elsewhere in other towns. So as far as the projections, that's the kind of with the data I had available to me at the time that I built the plan. Does that kind of answer?
Could you be moving forward with a $60,000?
Yeah, so there's also money already in that account that will be adequate to do this first phase of the project for us. So yeah, the 60,000 is definitely adequate.
So could you put up with a $60,000 contribution this year
He's asking if you could reduce the 100,000.
to 60,000?
Isn't the request for 60,000, not 100?
Is for a deposit of $100,000 for sidewalk capital reserves.
And a usage of 60,000.
Yeah.
So he's asking, instead of a 100,000 deposit, could you manage 60,000? So that would less the projected balance to $204,000.
I think for the first year, it would be fine. It would be once we start getting into the project. I think you guys are trying to, the way you fund it. You know, I request the project. That's not really my avenue to say how much is needed each year. It's kind of up to, I think, the budget committee and Lynn to say how much is needed to fund the project throughout it. So I think that was why they did the projection that way. I think the 60,000 will cover the entire project, this phase of the project, yes.
Okay, I would suggest that we do reduce that number from 100,000 to 60,000.
Sean has a motion
already available to him.
instead of a $100,000 deposit into sidewalk capital reserves, to reduce that to a $60,000 deposit. Are there any seconds to that?
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Lindsay?
So bear with me. How many sidewalks do we have that need, I mean, they all need it, but like how many, you said a 7-year time span
Yeah,
to get
so
this going?
that's to go from where they start at the Cleveland property all the way to Newport Road. Yep.
Newport Road, okay. And we can't speed that up? Do you need more money to do that? It doesn't seem like that, I'm totally speaking off the cuff here. Doesn't seem like that much to get done, but it's something, again, that's pretty important to people, so.
Absolutely. And I think we kind of figured the 7-year because it is going to balance some of our highway department workers to do the project, but also we don't know what we're going to run into as far as we haven't gotten the road layout from the state yet as far as like where the right-of-way is, if we can actually widen the sidewalk in places, and how that's going to change with the state, because it's all within the state's right-of-way. It's not town,
Right,
the
right.
sidewalk lands
Yeah.
within the property. So I've been conservative with, what we think we can tackle in one thing. Could we hire a contractor to come in and do the entire sidewalk from one stretch to the other? We probably could, but it would just be, a very large amount of money because they'd be doing the entire project. Historically, New London's always done their sidewalks kind of in phases, and we've done it with a blend of contracted work and work from Public Works in general, and it seems to work well and, get you a pretty good product at a very reasonable price.
What do we use, asphalt?
Yep.
How long does it last? So like 7 years, by the time you get to Newport Road, you probably need to start right back again at the beginning.
If they're taken care of and we use like proper preventive maintenance plans, they should last, realistically, sidewalks, paved ones should last 15 to 20 years realistically. Just the sidewalks that we have haven't been protected or maintained. They've just kind of were put in place and then that was it. They just get snow blowed and that's about it.
Yeah.
Like they don't get crack sealed, they don't get, like a barrier over them to protect them from UV in the summertime. Curb doesn't get reset. So they've just been slowly falling in disarray. So once we get them back up to standard, I think they'll last a long time as long as it's maintained.
Well, I'm speaking out of turn, and this is totally my opinion, but I do think that overall, the town probably wants their sidewalks to all be operable all the time, and they're a mess right now, and that's not your fault. We haven't, we've had multiple projects. None of this is coming at you.
Yeah,
It's
no,
just
I
my
totally
perspective
understand,
from a funding. So I question reducing a capital outlay for a project because I don't want it to take 7 years. But that's kind of out of my purview if that's the only option that we have.
I mean, we've focused on Main Street just because Main Street is the worst section of sidewalk, like Seamans Road and Pleasant Street and stuff isn't bad. And then Parkside's relatively new. Newport Road would kind of probably be the next priority after Main Street's done. And partially why we, like I said, again, we did in phases was because of the water main bond that's on the road. If we get into next year and we just, we could revisit if we wanted to try to do in larger sections, or we might be able to tackle it in larger sections with the same amount or a little bit more money too. So it kind of depends on what we're going to get into. It's
Sorry.
a moving target. Sorry.
No, I was.
Like I said, I'm all for being conservative. I just would love to see the project completed faster. That's all.
And I noticed in the spreadsheet here, we have a $150,000 line item, but it's reduced to $100,000, right? So it's already been reduced by $50,000 from the original right? So, and
And if you look in the spreadsheet, give me 2 seconds, Mark, and then, if you look in the spreadsheet, you can see the CIP, the plan that Sam submitted to the CIP, so you see it going out and by 2031, we need to keep funding it every year because it will be, you'll see
negative.
$500,000 there, so
Yeah.
I would recommend sticking with the 100,000 because this is a planning mechanism for us and we should keep putting the money in there so that we have it when we need to spend it.
I'd also say that was obviously a projection at what it would cost, and if we take out $40,000 now and we decide we need to add $40,000 a year from now or 2 years from now, it's not going to be, it's going to cost more than $40,000, right? Mark, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, thank you. I really just want to emphasize what the three of you just said. With a personal note, I've had the privilege of serving on the Budget Committee for now 6 years. And I am telling you, I have been incredibly patient with the sidewalk issue. The sidewalks are horrible, and the suggestion of reducing the money that it will take to bring these sidewalks up to the standard that I believe our citizens deserve is embarrassing. I do not recommend lowering the price for sidewalks. Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion from John to lower it to 60, seconded by Charlie. Do you want to take a vote? All those in favor? All those opposed? All right, so the motion does not pass. Right.
I think John said he had a second question, so I figured I'd stay for it.
Okay, for the town building maintenance, we got $250,000 in the account right now with nothing really out there to do. Can we reduce that $100,000 contribution this year to say $50,000?
I don't think it would be a good idea to reduce that one just because of the fact that we're in the process now. They're doing the building analysis of all the buildings. We're hopefully going to have that report back. There's some things that I think you're going to see come up immediately that should be addressed. For one, like the boiler at the highway department lower garage right now needs to be replaced, and it's around $50,000, and it's failed. So we're getting quotes right now actively to get it replaced. That would come out of that fund, if the selectmen were to approve it. And I think that once they get done with their building study, they're going to find other things that are going to be of immediate repair, honestly. So.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want to make a motion?
Nope.
All right.
I can vote it down too many times tonight.
Any other questions? Karen?
Just looking to understand this better here, and to Chairman Helm making the clarification as well, just so I kind of wanted to follow up on that. So what we're being asked to do here is, and we're not taking a vote yet, we're just looking over, we're just reviewing what's being presented. And so, Chris, please correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Which I probably am, but just want to make sure I get my head on straight on this. So we will be seeing a warrant, we will be seeing a line item then to add each of these where it says deposit in FY 2026. So there'll be a line item for each of those amounts for those purposes, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And what about the spending piece in FY 2026? Do we not see that? Are we not asked to vote on that?
Most of them you will not, because the selectmen are agents to expend,
Okay.
except for the 2 fire vehicles. Those will be on the warrant because the selectmen are not agents to expend. So most of them, the selectmen are agents to expend. We put them on there so you know what we're expecting to spend, so you can make decisions on deposits.
Got it.
Yep.
All right.
And if you'd like, we've had extensive discussions on agents to expend in previous years' budgets, so we have lots of information on that if you need.
Got it. No, I just, as I look at this, there wasn't
Yeah,
distinction, and just wanted to understand the difference.
Yep.
Thank you.
thank you. All right, any other capital reserve questions?
I have one, and that, do we deal separately with the Conservation Commission?
No, that's actually a good point. So I know that does anyone from the Conservation Commission like to speak? I know that there was a request to the selectmen to add.
No, they requested, you may not have been at the meeting, they made a request for $75,000.
Yep.
The select board did not.
That's what I'm saying.
No, the Conservation Commission came to this committee and asked for $75,000 already.
Okay.
With an explanation. So, but we took the explanation, but I think as a part of the consideration of reserve funding, we have to consider that request.
We can,
I think so, because.
is that the rule? Do we need to make a motion on that? I
Yeah,
mean,
if you want to consider putting 75,000 in, you
Right.
certainly can.
we don't have to make a motion to consider it. We've already, it's not considered right now in the budget.
Okay.
So unless you
No,
want to
I'm
add
not,
it, you're
I'm
not
not adding
advocating
it,
to add
no,
Yeah.
not at this time.
Okay.
But you might want to have a discussion. I think that the Conservation Commission would appreciate it. They did ask for the 75,000. I mean, if you're going to, I would at least discuss it or decide whether or not you want to, go opposition to the selectmen, right?
Well, it's not there. We don't have to vote.
You don't have to vote, but I think Charlie's bringing it up. You're bringing it up. You're all acknowledging that the Conservation Commission did come before you. They have it in their budget. Rob Prohl and Mark Vernon talked about it. I do think, I mean, you don't have to make a motion if you don't want, but I definitely think that, for the Conservation Commission, they might want to hear whether or not you want to consider the 75,000.
Well, my contention is we continue to look at individual items and the impact they have on the whole. And I'm a fan of conservation, and I spoke at the last meeting when this item came up, talked about collaborative efforts with some of the local land trusts, which some of that work is being done, talked about the lakes and the fact that that acreage is not considered in the 25% conserved land as the state has recommended. And I made the point that Gile Forest, although not in the town of London, but right over the town line, is 7,000 acres of preserved land that everybody in this room has access to at any time. And my contention has been taking a broader net instead of letting, of consideration of preservation versus allowing our sole town line limits to be the dictating factor as to whether we're at the goal or not at the goal. And when we've got this many capital requests, they're all important, but this one to me is one that I just think we shouldn't adopt this year for those reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I know the Conservation Committee's come to us a many number of years asking for monies, and we've talked about the cost of acquiring land, and that, how much money it would cost, and we don't have it in the capital reserves to potentially pay for that. And does this make a true difference? I think, unless we made a larger deposit, which I think could be a discussion, but I know the selectmen haven't wanted to do that. I'm a fan of conservation as well, but I think to your point, what we have in front of us, what we're facing in the future as far as priorities go, that might not rise to the top. So while I think I support, I wouldn't be in favor of adding it this year. Any other questions or discussion? Or motions? Okay. All right. I dare ask any other questions or comments on capital reserves before we move to warrant articles. All right, so let's do that. Oh, Jamie, sorry.
Oh, good, this is on. Thank you. I'm Jamie Hess from Duck Inlet Lane. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to say a few brief remarks. First of all, I have a few facts that were not available to the committee before I walked in. One is a piece of bad news, which is that our grant application was unsuccessful for money for a solar array at the stump dump. I'm sorry to have to share that with you. We just heard recently about that. So if we are going to move forward with a solar array at the stump dump, it's going to be on our nickel, as I guess they say. The good news, on the other hand, is that with the current laws in effect on the federal level, if we expend $150,000 for a solar array, we get 30% of that back from the IRS through their direct pay rebate. So we get $45,000 back, which would get plowed back into the capital reserve and could be used for perhaps another solar array or an energy efficient boiler for the highway department or something like that. That would move us closer to our renewable energy goals, which are threefold: electricity, heating, and transportation. And ideally, we should be working on all three. So one other point that I would like to make is I really appreciate the selectmen advocating for a contribution to the energy project's capital reserve because last year there was no contribution, and the year before there was only half of the regular contribution. What I do want to point out, and this could be a topic for future discussion, is that the last time it was voted on by town meeting, the voters at town meeting said they wanted to spend $30,000 a year to put into the energy project's capital reserve. And that happened for 4 years thereafter, but we then had a deficiency of $15,000 2 years ago, a deficiency of $30,000 last year, and we're talking about a deficiency of $10,000 this year. So what does that add up to? Adds up to $55,000 underfunding of the energy project's capital reserve relative to what town voters expressed support for back in 2019 when the capital reserve was established. So I would like for everyone here tonight to think about how we can catch up so that we can invest in energy projects which return savings to the town over a period of decades. Or perhaps maybe we should put it to another vote at town meeting. Do we want to restore that $30,000 a year, or should we be cutting it year after year after year? And that's all I'd really like to say at this time. And except for I just wanted to address Karen's comment about going to community power for that 100% renewable electricity. It is quite a bit more expensive than what we're paying now, but it would be worth doing an analysis of, are we going to spend so much more over the next X number of years buying that 100% renewable power from community power, or would it be better to own the renewable energy ourselves and realize savings over time instead of higher costs over time?
Great. Thank you, Jamie.
All right, thank you.
Well, do you want to stay just in case we have questions?
Sure.
So I guess I have a question just with that news. Does that change the expenditure, the $150,000?
Well, don't forget, that was only going to be if the selectmen determine that that's something that they want to do. So that's not something that you're going to be voting on anyway. The Energy Committee may come back and say that's not a viable project at the moment.
Right. Right. Okay. Any other questions for Jamie? All right. Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. All right. So do we want to go through the warrant articles? Kim, do you want to give an overview of the
Sure.
different articles?
The first one, hopefully many of you have already heard of this one. A group of citizens came to the selectmen in July to talk about refurbishing the historic markers that you see around town. I included a link on your agenda, so hopefully you've been able to see the pictures that the group sent of all the markers that are around. Any questions about that project? Those funds, the $40,000 is expected to come from 2 existing trust funds. So this will not be money that's raised and appropriated from taxes. Next, we have,
Sure, come on up to the stand. Just state your name.
Rich Epstein, resident. So I was talking to a member of the trustees of the trust funds, and the way I understood it from that person was that these other funds, the reason why it can be used for these historical markers was, it's just basically supplemental to our operating budget. So, because, and I saw it in your municipal matters, it says, oh, and it won't affect tax rates. But somehow, I mean, we think if it's supplemental to the operating budget, that we could maybe take $40,000 from and use it for police needs, which I would assume if we can reduce that, that would help our spending, which I assume in some form affects our taxes. So I'm trying to understand the way it looks in municipal matters for somebody like me who's not a finance person, it sounds like free money.
no, all money is taxpayer money somehow.
Okay.
When I say it doesn't increase the tax rate, when we go to figure the tax rate, capital reserve funds, which is taxpayer money, is used as a revenue, so it doesn't increase the tax rate. You're completely right that we could use that money for other things that are in the operating budget, which would reduce the operating budget.
Okay. So I guess
So it's money that's already raised from the taxpayers at some point. It's not going to be raised again.
Okay.
Which, if we raised it again, would affect the tax rate.
Okay, but it ultimately, because it does, maybe you're confirming, it does affect our taxes.
Does affect your taxes. It will not increase your tax rate.
But
We're going to spend, if we have an expense and a revenue, there's no impact, right? If you have a $40,000 expense and a $40,000 revenue, that's not we're not going to have, we'll raise 0 taxes that year to pay for that item.
Okay.
Whenever these particular trusts, the money
Right.
came from somebody else, so, but it's
Right.
currently taxpayer, it's
Okay,
town funds.
These are funds that are available for all.
Is it safe to assume, though, that those funds aren't available for just anything, or is
It's
that?
the support of the general fund.
Yeah.
Right.
So the
So
selectmen
that's
could have
up to
used
the
it.
selectmen.
Yes. Select the general fund. We're going to put that on the warrant to see if people want to spend the money on that.
The general fund,
I believe
for the benefit of
the town, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right, so so if it was instead of for these historical markers, it went for the police, and then they wouldn't have to take as much money from the other mechanisms that would reduce our taxes.
Correct. We're buying, the
Okay.
town is
So I
going
think
to
it should-
spend,
I think like municipal matters should show it shouldn't make it look like it's free money. It affects our taxes. I know I'm not a finance, somehow it doesn't.
it would,
Right.
I'll say it this way, Rich. If we weren't going to use these trust funds, it would increase your tax rate. Doing this project without the use of these funds would increase your tax rate. We are going to be able to repair all these markers, and because we have money coming from somewhere else, it will not increase your tax rate.
Okay,
I understand what you're saying, though. We could use this money for something else.
Right.
The selectmen are going to, or they agree with this group of citizens that say a good use of this fund would be to take care of these markers.
okay.
And you're able to do it without increasing your taxes.
I think it should be clear in like municipal matters that these funds could also be used for other purposes. Hopefully, I'm not sure if everybody in the budget committee understood that, but I think.
It is, people want to use it for other things, you certainly could bring
Yeah,
it up.
I'll let Kim decide how we want to handle that in municipal matters.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I'm the editor-in-chief, so I'm happy to put an article in. Everybody knows
appreciate the comment.
I'm very tough on it in the office. Articles get through me. So yeah, I can certainly talk about where the money's going to come from, no question about it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So Rich, I just want to say that I think I know one of the families that contributed this money to the town. Most of these funds
One of
are.
those, Addie Gay is one of them, is that the one you're talking
The
about?
Lashes, that's the one I know. And their intention was for it to go for something monumental, not just to offset our tax dollars. And so I think emotionally, if the money doesn't go to something like this, that we're improperly using it, so.
Okay, but that's not how I had understood talking to, maybe that's what's the intention, but maybe the way it was actually filed and could go anywhere, it sounds like, from what Kim said.
Yep.
But thank you very much for letting me ask this question. I just want to make sure everything's understood by the public. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Any other questions on historical markers? Okay. Website improvements.
John's favorite topic. We're looking to make improvements in our website. Our website was designed probably 20, 25 years ago. We are not ADA compliant with it, so we hope to make changes in it to bring it up to ADA compliance. We're also hoping to get into the 21st century with regard to online fillable forms. People will be able to apply for building permits, do everything online. They currently can't do that, so this is kind of step one in that process. So we're looking at various different companies. There are a lot of them out there, and similar to the budget software that Lynn and several others looked into over many months, we'll be doing the same thing with our website.
Great. All right, any questions on that? I have one. Lindsay?
Kim, is this like a one-time 25,000, or what's the
No.
revolving cost? Is that
Right,
yearly,
we'll
annually?
depending on which firm we go with.
Which
there's-
one?
Yeah, and we currently spend money each month to
Sure.
host our website, so it could be anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 a month.
And you're just looking at companies that already have,
A year. Yeah.
you're looking at companies that already have platforms and systems
Yes.
designed for
Gov
government
Office is one.
entities?
Right. If you look at some of the other websites for other towns and cities, I mean, they're pretty robust. We haven't really spent much time on ours, so.
Yeah, no,
And all the towns do the same thing, so there's a lot of information out there, so.
perfect, thanks.
I have a question. Okay, I just wanted to make sure, is a new website going to include an easier way for town payments? Because right now, it's fairly onerous, and I think it's,
Really?
You pay an additional fee.
Oh, well, that's not going to change.
That's not gonna
Oh, yeah,
change.
no. I think the town clerk tax collector's office is really way ahead of the rest of our website. Well done, Will.
Okay.
Next up, we are recommending we create an expendable trust fund. As you know, in the operating budget, there was a line for leave time buyout. When employees are separated from the town, if they have unused leave time, the town pays it out. So we will put $10,000 into this expendable trust so that we won't have to budget in the operating budget every year. If nobody leaves or there's nobody who's leaving with leave time to be paid out, it will just stay in the fund.
Uneducated question, can that leave time, is there a limit to the amount
Yes.
of leave time?
Yep.
Okay, so that doesn't just accumulate?
No, back in the old days, I guess employees could just keep on piling it up. It's 240 hours for employees that are hired now. It's up to
So
280 some others.
6 weeks of
Right.
pay?
There's
Okay.
no, sick time is not accumulated, it's just vacation time.
Okay. All right.
Yep. And we do encourage employees to take time off, so hopefully people take the time off and it's not accumulated. But if they leave and they have that time, it must be paid out.
Okay. Any questions on that from committee members? Okay. Police facilities?
And BB already pointed to this when she gave her selectmen's report. Currently, the selectmen are working on a purchase and sale agreement of the $350,000. They are not yet finished with their deliberations for what they will request for other parts of this project. As BB pointed out, whether it's design, money for design, site work, things like that, so.
Charlie?
So the $2 million amount for the capital outlay originally was for land acquisition, design, site preparation, and other expenses as a first phase of that new facility project. The warrant article is asking for the 350, but the remainder amount is not being asked for?
We haven't finalized the number yet. All we've finalized of the 2 million is that 350.
So we will be going for the 2 million?
We
But-
put that in as a, as a boilerplate, as a placeholder because of dollars estimates that we got from the La Valley Brenzinger. They gave us an estimate of 1.5 million for architecture, design work, and engineering work, and then when we got to the agreed price for the Garvey property, that was 350. So that's kind of where there's a lot of numbers rolling around. So we just put that placeholder in of 2 million.
So do we also, will the select board then be coming forward with another warrant article once that's figured out?
It'll be one. It'll be one that will include everything. So we don't have a warrant article for 350 right now. It will be one ultimately when we're all said and done.
I understand what you're saying. My words, repeating what I think you said, is we've cleanly and clearly identified the cost of the land.
Correct.
At $350,000.
Correct.
The remainder costs are still in flux. However, the total $2 million ask will still be put forward.
Well, we don't know exactly
Yeah.
if it'll be 2 million, and I can't say for sure if it'll be one article or two.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Will be
The
finalized.
selectmen are hoping,
Finalized.
there's another meeting on Friday morning of the police facilities.
Yeah.
So there'll be some more information, and the selectmen are going to try and work as fast as they can to get a firm number to you.
Okay.
Okay, she answered it.
BB, can you just restate where the land is?
Yeah, it's down here on Seamans Road, just past the college, just past that last parking lot on the right-hand side. That whole side of Seamans Road there's about 20 acres or so that the Garvey family owns. And so they've agreed to carve 4 acres out of that piece to sell to us for $350,000.
Any other, Karen?
Just to follow along that 2 million, embedded in the debt service line is the 50,000 for that as well. So if that number were to change, we'd see a change in prospective debt
Yep,
service.
absolutely.
Okay.
True statement.
Okay, anything else? And as Kim noted to me, that does not, we still may have other warrant articles. There's still time for petition, so we may see before we get to even next week, there could be something. So there could be other things to review before time. Okay. All right. The other item we have, which I'm looking at my clock and it says 8:29, is a review of budget for approval. I don't think we're ready to start to go through line items to do that tonight. I would say we do not. Oh,
What about this thing that was sent to us today?
so Chief sent we discussed that in the beginning with the minutes, that Chief had included this information based on a request on the fleet.
Right. But I don't, well, okay, I don't see it. Quick.
So this comes to the expenditure for, the question was asked about the Tahoe and the cost of the Tahoe, and then a question came, I think it was from Karen or maybe, or you, about just in general, what does the fleet look like, sort of, what do we have, how much mileage, et cetera. So she went through that analysis, or I think did Colin help with this? Colin helped with this as well. He requested it, and she provided it.
Okay. I think there's a request by the police department to replace the 2020 Tahoe, which has 69,000 miles on it, with a new one. And I don't think we really addressed that when we talked about it before. The part that we were talking about, I think, with regard to the minutes, was my request last week to clarify the situation with the Tahoe. And I think Emily said that she would, the chief said that she would have a memo that would clarify that. Perhaps this week, since we're not reviewing minutes, that doesn't come up. But this piece of information that's been passed out to us, I think, does warrant some conversation, that we're looking to replace a vehicle with only 69,000 miles on it, when in general, everything I can find about the Chevy Tahoe Interceptor is that they get 120,000 miles on it. So we're giving up almost half-life of this thing to replace it now. And I think that's a mistake. And the reason that I've been given is that because of a problem with the Dodge Challengers, where we ended up buying 2 in 1 year, that all 3 cars would become due for replacement in 1 year and would spike the price. I can't accept that, because we're giving up half the value of the car. This Tahoe is worth more to us than it is to anybody else, and it's an $80,000 replacement when you consider the car and the equipment that upgrade that has to go in it. So I have to say that I just cannot accept this request for the Tahoe on that basis. And I would like to hear other comments from us here.
Thank you, John. I would clarify that Chief did provide a memo. Kim and I chatted about just where the costs were coming from for the $60,000 and where the extra $20,000 were coming from. Right. We did not include it. We have it. We will put it in the minutes.
I'm supposed to fix the minutes. That was the issue.
Well, it's also, you also have that in front of you.
I don't know if they all have it, do they?
Did she just, no, you're right. She only, so we will include that in the minutes, in the revised minutes. I would like, Chief, do you want to address John's comments, and then we can open it up to questions?
And I'd like to make a comment.
And, okay, so Bibi, why don't you start?
Yeah. I'd like to start with I actually reached out to, my sister-in-law is the Deputy Chief of Police for Tufts University. I reached out to her with some questions about fleet maintenance, and she connected me with the fleet maintenance manager for Tufts University. Yep. He was actually shocked that we were waiting 6 years to replace our cruisers. They replace their cruisers every 3 to 4 years. And also, the unit of measurement for replacing cruisers isn't mileage, it's actually the hours, what's the terminology?
Engine hours?
Engine hours. This isn't a regular car like I drive 69,000 miles around town. This is a car that is usually running 20 hours out of 24 hours out of the day. So you're measuring the engine hours and not the mileage of the car. And finally, I'd just like to say that the fact that this issue keeps coming up over and over and over again, I just really find offensive to the chief, and I don't think it's right to keep bringing it up. And that's enough, all I have to say.
Chief, I'll let you address John on his questions or his comments on mileage.
Well, like I had mentioned in my presentation, I have concerns that we're going to see a big spike in FY27 with multiple cars needing to be replaced at the time.
But remember that we do auction these vehicles off. So if the old K9 car, we just auctioned that off, and I think it's going to bring in $8,200. So that will be a source of revenue for the town. That when we are done with the cruisers, we do auction them. So I think it's appropriate to consider replacing the 2020 Tahoe at this time. Due to the age of the car and the potential mechanical issues that could come up with it. I don't know if there was more questions in there from John, but.
Lindsay, you have a comment?
Just a question. Can we use the estimated resale value in order to reduce the budget line?
You could if you asked town meeting to do that. When
Okay.
things are sold, town property sold, it goes back to the general fund, sale of town property, but you
Okay.
could ask town meeting to raise and appropriate.
Explain to me why that's not a good, because it doesn't sound like it is. I don't know.
No, it
just-
could be, it's a source of
It
revenue.
is okay?
So you could say, raise and appropriate $80,000 and to take the sale of the vehicle and apply it against the total. If you don't say that, you raise and appropriate the $80,000 and the sale, whatever the sale is, goes into the fund. So it's all still town money.
Clarity, that helps.
Any other questions or comments? Karen?
I look at this differently. I don't take it as offensive that a question keeps coming up. When a question keeps coming up in my mind, it speaks to the need of really hearing the question and evaluating it. You never know, things change. And so I would hate for people to feel discouraged about discouraged if they have a recurring question. They should continue to raise it. It's their obligation in my mind to do so. And to John's point, I think it's a reasonable thing to ask. And is there another way to approach it? I think. I know we're paying for cruises out of the operating budget. I don't know the history, so I'll just ask, has it been paid for through capital in previous years or times?
Yes, it
So-
was. And the idea at that point was that because it was an annual ongoing cost, to not create a warrant article for it every single year. And so it was put into the operating budget for that very reason.
So I'm just kind of trying to connect the dots here. If there are capital reserves then put aside for the cruises, and when decided we wanted to kind of push it a bit to see if we could get extra mileage out. I mean, cars have changed. We hear a lot about that. That reserve then could be available if indeed we find that that it wasn't working out and we needed to replace a cruiser outside of the normal course. The reserves may be there. So that's just an idea as to approach it in a different way. I just had another thought that just kind of escaped me, but I think it's a very good question, and we should encourage each other to always raise our questions as opposed to discouraging it.
All right. Are there any other comments on that? So what I was going to bring up is the review for budget approval. So we do not have a meeting scheduled next week. Typically, we don't schedule meetings on the week of Martin Luther King. We do have a meeting scheduled on the 29th that I believe the selectmen were planning to attend as well. The hope would be to vote on the budget and also do reconciliation potentially at the same time, because the following week is the public hearing for the Budget Committee. Kim and I just discussed, and I don't know people's schedules, there is an option to potentially move that meeting up to next week, but I also am leery of people's schedules, and you did not already plan for this, so I'm just curious if people are available next Wednesday, if we wanted to have a meeting next Wednesday and take a vote. But I also want to maximize the number of people that would be here, because that's obviously an important meeting for voting.
I'm flying to Paris.
John is flying to Paris, so that
You won't have your finance officer either, but
we won't have you front.
I could-
Are you
I-
coming back for the 29th?
try and help.
All depends. No.
Sounds like a fun trip to France.
No, I'll be back.
You'll be back, okay. So I hesitate to have a meeting with someone out if that was not in the plan.
So when the selectmen were talking about it, we thought you would have a meeting next week. I will not be here on the 29th.
Okay. The other option is we could have a meeting following that Wednesday. We have time to put that together just with the Budget Committee and the selectmen before public hearing. So we could come up with some options, maybe you and I can chat after this and send that to the selectmen and the Budget Committee members with some options for meetings. Is anybody else unavailable on the 22nd or 29th?
I can be available any day.
Okay. All right. You're available. Meg, Karen, you're available. Okay. All right. So I'll work with you tonight or tomorrow on getting a schedule out. Thanks, Bill, for letting us know about the 29th. Okay. Any other business? Any motions to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Any seconds? All those in favor?
Nay.